In the past 2 years, Parliament embarked on a nationwide provincial women's charter review sessions that took stock of the progress made in implementing the 1994 Women's Charter and assessed its impact since the country's advent of freedom and democracy. The Women's Charter for Accelerated Development report back session in Limpopo is led by Sylvia Lucas of the NCOP, and she's the Deputy Chairperson, and she joins us now to discuss this year's report back session. Ms. Lucas, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for joining us. Now, the Women's Charter is a document first designed in 1994 to vanguard the interests of women. For a document that has been around for so long, why is it that it does not form part of our everyday conversations?
Thank you very much, Tatlego. I should say that in our assessment of the Women's Charter for effective equality, we have actually done a very broad assessment in terms of legislative framework, in terms of impact on the lives of women, what is outstanding, what is being implemented. It is actually really very sad that it's not a document that is generally spoke about. But we should say, in our review process, we found that there is quite a lot of progress that has been made. The unfortunate part is that, and I think that is why we are experiencing the challenges that we are experiencing in terms of the position of women, because it is not generally that we will make sure that the women's agenda remain in the discourse. And I think we should blame all of us, because we didn't make sure that generally things are being changing, laws are being made. There was Domestic Violence Act, there was Criminal Matters Act and related matters. It was there. But the fact of the matter is we didn't give it a specific focus. And in 2019, when we were appointed to Parliament, and particularly to the NCOP, at that stage, it was like everyone was busy with whatever they were busy with. I was looking into the legacy report of Parliament. And one of the things that I noticed is that the Women's Charter of 1954 was reviewed to the inception of democracy in 1994. After that, and in 2019, it was exactly 25 years. No one actually looked into making sure that the 12 articles that was identified then, what kind of progress that have been made. So we immediately said that let us take this as a project and make it a program that will become in something that will be in the national discourse. That will be something that people will speak about. It will also be something that will actually bring the focus of government back to a natural agenda, because it is the kind of things that make women to be oppressed and suppressed, that make women to be the most unequal in society. And that is why, and also although we are having a women's agenda, we have been having it all the time. We shouldn't say there was no women's agenda. There were different activists, there were different people that strive for a women's agenda, but it was not coordinated. And it was not, anyone nowadays, I am attending many events, even on the continent of Africa. You will find that all of a sudden everyone is speaking about gender-based budgeting, everyone is speaking about gender-based violence and femicide. It's exactly because from the side of South Africa and also from the side of SADC, we have begun to say that if we as women, it seems it is generally the case, if we do not stand up and speak about issues that is of interest for us as women, there is no one that will do it. So we actually, as Parliament, and under the leadership of the Deputy Chairperson and the Deputy Speaker's office, we went out on a countrywide review, district by district. And we said to women, and many women was aware of the Women's Charter. You know, women have been activists generally in nature. It's just for someone to come out and take leadership. And you will find that in any case, people have been waiting for someone somewhere to do something. And fortunately, we were there to start this process.
Now, Deputy Chair, talking about the door-to-door, district-to-district campaigns that you did, having gone back to those communities, where the women's charter is actually meant to serve the women of those particular communities. What similarities or differences did you find in the plight of women in 1994 as opposed to now?
One thing that I can say, for someone that have been active also for some time, the biggest difference that we have seen in terms of women then and women now is that women came out in their numbers and they spoke about the issues that concern themselves. They spoke about the issues that concern themselves. They were very honest and they went in depth to actually bring us up to speed with the issues that concern themselves. And I think it's quite different from what we found when we started in. Remember in 1995, I became a local councillor, and I was one of 3 women that became a local councillor in my local municipality. And then now, we had to start to make women aware to say that, but you are entitled to be represented. You are entitled to speak about the issues that bothers you and so on. But 25 years later, you find, for instance, a woman in the Free State. She will say, I was married to this guy for 7 years. I've suffered gender-based violence and intimate partner violence under this person. And no one of my family assisted me. And because of my child, I stood up and I walked out of that relationship. Today, I'm running a community-based organization where I assist other women that are having the same fate that I used to suffer before. So what I can say is that more and more women at this stage, 25 years after democracy when we started, it's 27 years now, are at a point where they are empowered, where they are developed, and where they are in a process where they can do things for themselves, that they can speak for themselves. And it's a vast difference. There were many women involved in the struggle for liberation, but you will not hear about everyone. But in this process that we embarked on, we heard the voices of everyone. And the biggest difference that is also there is that it is still rural women that are carrying the brunt of underdevelopment, that are carrying the brunt of inequality. But women in the urban areas, they are more empowered, they have more access to information, but generally you need to make sure that that activism is being unearthed and is being unleashed so that more and more women can do things for themselves. But I should say there is a big difference, because now where we are standing at this current moment, women know that they will have to do things for themselves, because no one will do things for you if you don't stand up and start to do things for yourself.
Most certainly. Now, South Africa seems to have some of the best constructed policies, charters. We even are known to have the best constitution in the world. But how practical are some of these documents when it comes to real-life implementation? I mean, you mentioned earlier on that some of the programs aren't even perfectly designed to speak to the 12 articles that have been tabled out in the Women's Charter.
One major step that the South African government has taken, and that we must commend them for that, is to make sure that there is a ministry for women, children and people with disabilities. Because under the auspices of that ministry, government is able to make sure that we do monitoring, we monitor on a constant basis, we do advocacy, and we make sure that those policies that are there, if they are not implementable, we review them and we make them implementable for the sake of women. If they are implementable, those that are not implementing it, then the problem is with them. It's exactly when I was a premier and someone that is supposed to implement something tell me that the problem is with the implementation, then I say that means we don't have the right person. That will mean we don't have the right person, because the problem can never be the implementation. Because if you feel a policy doesn't work, you cannot feel a policy doesn't work at face value. You must begin to implement it and then see what is the kind of challenges that you experience with the implementation. And then you can say that possibly this is not the best policy. How can we amend it? That is my view. People can differ from me, but that is my view. You cannot stand at a distance and say, but this is not implementable. How did you assess it? How did you get to that point? You must be able to begin something. And that is what I was saying yesterday. Someone interviewed me and asked me, what how do we intend to roll this out further? I said, we need to start somewhere, and we started, and we are progressing. We are at the point where the 2 provinces that we went to, together with all the district municipalities in their 2 provinces, when they came back and they reported, it's not perfect. But the one thing is there is a consciousness that we need to do something, and that is more or less understanding what it should be, that we should be doing. And our partners, the Commission of Gender Equality, the Finance and Fiscal Commission. Finance and Fiscal Commission, for instance, in the case of Limpopo, could go into the social cluster and assess the budgets. They could give us a report to say 32% of the budget of social development is going for this cause that is actually assisting women and girl children. 42% of the budget of health is going into this cause that is actually, and that is exactly the kind of information that we need to get out there. And so that women, if they are not benefiting, because that is why in the process we bring back the women that initially we use in the review process. We bring back them and say, now you come and you listen. Are you satisfied? Is this your lived experience? What is happening? And that is exactly what we are doing with this report back session. But I should mention it. We are on course. We are not where we should be, but we are on course. And I think if Parliament continue with our oversight role, we will see that there will be a better implementation of the issues and of the agenda regarding women.
Now, Ms. Lucas, we know that for us to get to where we should be isn't only the efforts of government and other institutions and putting budgets and ensuring that the development of women in this country gets to where we want it to be. What advice would you have for the women themselves? What would they need to do to stand up in ensuring that all these other tools that are offered to them are of good use in ensuring that they are properly and fully developed?
It's so interesting. Yesterday, it was one of the things that I said to the women, because there was someone that stood up and said, where are all these women that you spoke about, that are having tenders, that are having, that are benefiting from this projects and all of that and all of that. I was saying, the problem that we have is that we as women, we remain negative towards ourselves. Because this person is in a certain position. In the position where you are, what are you doing to make sure that you mobilize women around a certain cause? But I am just mentioning this in passing. Let me tell you something very interesting, and I was really very much impressed. One young woman stood up, a young woman. She said, I have now worked so hard. I'm at the point where I just need financing for I'm going to open a petrol station. The studies, the environmental studies, all of that things have been done. The only thing that I need is finance now. And I took that young woman as an example for other women to say, look at this young woman. She went out, she ran around, she got something right. For the women of Limpopo, there is one person that stood up and said, we do get land, but the land that we get is not enough. And the issues that are brought up by the department make for us for not having sustainable kind of agricultural development. How do we work on that? So there is someone that went out and did something. And this person are coming back now and asking the government, what kind of assistance can you get? Now you use this kind of people as an example, but you also use the skill that this person had and say, go back, empower other women, particularly in the villages, particularly in the rural areas, because women in the rural areas, in Limpopo, for instance, let me say, Stats SA did a study. Limpopo have got the highest access to land for women of all the provinces, according to a study from Stats SA, which means generally, in terms of food poverty, Limpopo is not the one of the bottom provinces, which for us is a rural province. Sometimes you will say, is it possible? But they are not at the bottom because, for food poverty, because of the fact that women in the villages have access to land and they can produce their own food. So what I'm generally saying, there are many programs. I was impressed with one program also that I can mention. For instance, the rivers in Limpopo, Environmental Affairs are using the women of Limpopo to clean the rivers and to do environmental projects that will actually benefit the environment. So what I'm saying is that there are many things that women can do. And I am saying particularly, myself, as Sylvia Lucas, I am of the view that if we can implement the district development model, we will be at a point where the resources that are available could be better utilized. It could be better utilized, and we will be able to better coordinate, because the issue sometimes from the side of government is coordination, because every department, they've got something that they are doing, and they've got a budget for that thing that they are doing. But it's the same thing. If all the money was pooled, you would have get a better result, isn't it? And that is exactly what I'm saying. There are many ways that we can assist women. But all of us will have to take hands to make sure that we make that difference.
Ms. Lucas, thank you so much for your time. It's been an interesting conversation with you there. Thank you so much for the time that you've given us today.